Good to see you, everyone. I see some names I know. It's a pleasure to invite you to join. Theodore, welcome. Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. I wasn't sure it was you. I'm so pleased. So let's welcome Theodore Zeldin.
Well, I'd like to hear your answer to this question.
I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. So let me explain as we start, and that way you will know the format of our talk. It's a moment of gathering where we invite people to share their experience, ideas, not for me to speak, and to say what I think, or just more to react and to give an opportunity for those who have experienced Savoir-Relier and those who are interested in developing themselves through the approach of Savoir-Relier to share on different topics. So every second Friday of the month, we have a topic that we put on the table. Some people think about it ahead of time and come up with experience and ideas and share. And we're just here to react and more to say a few words about the question and to illustrate what people share. And after that, people keep on exchanging and sharing either on Facebook or on different networks like LinkedIn. The idea is really to trigger and to instill some moment of exchange. As you know, it's so important for everyone to share and to be just together. So it's really a rather informal, not lecture, and I've already talked too much actually, but I'm so happy to see you. Theodore, we have to make an appointment and spend some time together. Okay. Thank you for being here. And I want to welcome everybody else. It's always very good to have this moment together. For today, we decided to talk about uncertainties. I remind you that last week we spoke about burnout, and some of you shared some very deep experiences about how you've been through burnout and how you came out of burnout and all the experience you've had. And the sharing was very, very deep and strong. This week, we chose to talk about uncertainties, meaning that we are living in a world of uncertainties today. Every day is full of questions, more and more. We think we're out of the situation of COVID and it starts again. We keep not knowing what's going to happen. And we know how difficult it is to cope with uncertainties, just as it is to cope with change, but also not knowing what's going to happen is probably the most critical element. As usual, I'm going to share my screen very briefly for a few slides, but just a few slides of introduction. And as you all know, we will have some informal and more formal feedback afterwards, so that you can keep on with the recording, the podcast, and more, keep on thinking about it and keep on discussing the topic. So with managing uncertainties, there are two main aspects of uncertainty that come up: the question of the duration and the magnitude of a crisis. And those two elements combined make it very, very difficult to cope and to define uncertainty, because it depends on how much time you have been in a situation of crisis, in a difficult situation, and how big, how huge it is. I can refer to the black swan and the black swan theory when we talk about the question of not knowing. Nassim Nicholas Taleb has talked about this in his book, The Black Swan, and it's another reference that you can use. But very briefly, the extreme uncertainties forces you, people, managers, to re-examine your collective thought processes and to challenge your own assumptions. And that's something that's very difficult to do, because as you know, when we work with the Savoir-Relier, we use the ladder of inference as a way to think about how we can revisit our own biases and our own assumptions, and how we can work on coming down our ladder to learn from one another and see with other people's eyes, so that we're not constantly focused on what we only see, but opening up to others to see how others see. And that's part of the process that we think is very valuable and very important in dealing with uncertainty. There are some challenges that are summed up in a that's one reference, one survey, top 5 challenges that have been observed in managing uncertainties. Optimism bias, informational instability, the wrong answer, the paralysis by analysis, and organizational exhaustion. I don't have time to go into the details of this. There are strategies to overcome the challenges. There's much to say about it, but again, the format is you. So I've talked too much already, and I want to leave the floor to the audience and to anyone who wants to speak, to share their experience, their questions, their ways of dealing with uncertainties that can enrich experience from one another, and so that we can learn from each other. So who wants to start taking the floor today? Always the little silence. You can turn on your microphone and just start talking.
Morning, everyone. Well, I guess it's morning where I am. Good afternoon, good evening. I would just like to say that uncertainty isn't always a bad thing. If you're leading a team and there's a high degree of uncertainty, I think that by the time your team makes sense of it all and unravels it, it can really strengthen your team and the relationships with your team members by the time you're done.
Very good point, Chris. And indeed, uncertainty is also a load of opportunities. And it's the way you are prepared and how you manage to be together prepared to face change, face new challenges and new ways of dealing with your environment that indeed can be very stimulating. Indeed, the posture is very important, and the way you face those opportunities will actually affect very much how your team and yourself are engaging in front of those uncertainties, and also the way you prepare. Maybe Chris, how do you prepare your colleagues and teams when you are in a moment of uncertainty?
I think for me, you have to explain to people that there are no answers right now, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what the end result is going to be, and things are going to become more clear as the end approaches. So just encouraging patience, and also letting your team members know that you're all in the same boat, right? That you're all trying to figure this out together, and just it's important that you row the same direction.
Anybody else wants to react? Omar, you have your microphone on. Yeah? No, we can't hear you. Anybody else wants to jump in? I see people like Remy, who's or Liam, people I know. Don't be afraid to jump in. Turn on your microphone and your camera. It's much better when we see you, like Chris did. Hello. Hi, Omar. We do see you.
Hi.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Very good, Omar.
Yes, I joined recently for your course in Coursera, and I find it very insightful.
Thank you, Omar.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to share about it?
Yeah. Actually, I've connected through my kid's iPad, and his name is Omar. My name is Adil.
Okay.
Adil Mirza. So far, I'm going through these courses and trying to do more tests.
And you're living in India, so I assume facing uncertainty and this is probably a topic of high value for you.
No, I'm in Saudi Arabia right now.
Okay.
Working here.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
Thank you.
All right, Omar.
I tried the prep exercise before the event. It's very funny because sometimes we recommend exercise and we don't necessarily take time for it. So this time I took like really 2 hours to think about all the uncertainties I had through this year. And I realized that I thought in the beginning that everything was going to be work related. And it was pretty much the opposite. Like, most of my uncertainties have only to do with family things. And the way I approach it was completely different from the way I approach things at work. I had like really, instead of jumping into action, which what I actually do, I had a much more wait and see, and like kind of like prepare and plan for the best, but keep like an open mind if things change, and how to be like flexible through the change. And it has been a lot of less stress that I would think about it, especially because usually my family is very stressful, and with this exercise, it made me realize that maybe that's something that I can bring to the work environment. So it kind of made me realize that's another way of acting and reacting that I didn't know I was even capable of. So I'm looking forward to try this and see how it goes.
Did the fact that you had to write, Camila, was it something that you found different from what we usually do when we think about difficulties or questions like this one?
Yes, but I think maybe it's something personal. I don't take time to process things. So when I have to write, I think about it and analyze more than if someone just asked my opinion. So it was really good to sit down. It took a little bit like a time in the beginning for me to kind of put things into place. But by the end of like 1 hour reflection, I really had some insights. So it was really a nice exercise.
Thank you for sharing, Camila. The writing element, as you all know, those of you who have practiced Savoir-Relier know that the first milestone of the work is to write a solo, or self-portrait, which means that you have to engage in thorough reflection and use writing as a medium to take that step back and go much deeper into your own analysis of your circles of relationships, be it you and yourself, you and other, you and a group, or you and society. And the writing itself, when it is extensive, not just bullet points or just very small pieces of writing, but really extensive, makes a big difference. And I can never encourage you enough to go through writing and to use writing as a medium to find yourself, to share, to open up, and to go deeper in those questions. So indeed, that I really want to highlight this point. It's very, very important. Theodore, feel free to speak if you want also.
All right, well, I'll tell you what I think. I think you're talking about uncertainty as though it is a hiccup in a world which is normally certain. I think the contrary. I think we live in a world where everything is uncertain and where we have invented civilizations and politics and business which all make promises about the future, but these promises are usually not fully fulfilled. And let's say uncertainty is normal. And with regard to individuals are unpredictable. And therefore what humans do is trying to make the world more predictable on the basis of two things. One is mythology, by inventing stories which make one assume that a civilization is the best civilization and it protects you, and so you mustn't be afraid of the barbarians outside, or by experience. And so if you have a partner with whom you have worked for a long time, you can predict more or less that this partner will fall this way or that way for some of the time, but you think that you can rely on that partner most of the time. And this therefore, certainty is something humans create in an atmosphere which is the opposite. And it is a very serious matter that we still believe, for example, in politics, that we vote for people according to their promises, when we have the experience that they don't keep their promises, and yet we vote for them. And so we are trying to make the world certain by invention, by creating a mythology that somehow it will be so. It is a useless task. That's the answer to your question.
Yeah.
And isn't this the purpose for example, a company. Because when I had a company with like a few employees, I thought that my goal was to bring certainty to them, not in everything, but in some things, so that they wouldn't be overflooded and they could like experience and benefit from things without having to always be worried about something.
And I think, Theodore, one thing you're touching upon is the fear. We live in fears, and people want to be reassured. They want to be constantly reassured about what they do, that what they do is right, and they think about right and wrong, and they feel uncomfortable. We feel uncomfortable when we don't know. But you're very right. We live in uncertainties. That's the norm. If you look at nature lives in uncertainties as well. The weather, the plants, animals, they're fueled by uncertainty. So I totally agree with what Chris was saying, that uncertainty is not necessarily something negative. It is just perceived as something negative. And I think the COVID pandemic that we've lived has reinforced the stigma about uncertainty, that it creates fear, and it's fear that triggers the way people react and behave, and it's always in fear that we create situations where things don't work. And Theodore, when you mentioned voting, when you look at what happened in France like a couple of weeks ago, when about 80% of the population did not vote, you start realizing again the gap that there is between what our leaders tend to, or presidents or politics, but all of our environment try to push when there is no faith anymore, there's no trust. And the question of trust is what we want to work on and to reestablish. You talked about having a partner. When we work with the Savoir-Relier, our main focus and our first engagement is with one other person, the one-on-one. And this duo exercise and practice gives an opportunity to really discover someone and understand yourself as you go. And there is no question of finding an answer. So for me, when there is a question, the question is open. So the idea is not to give an answer to the question, it's to open up avenues for reflection so that you feel you're more capable of facing whatever is happening and accepting that we live in uncertainty. But that's what is so difficult.
I would add 2 points to that. When I talk of a partner, this is what people concentrate on and try and find one partner whom they can trust, more or less, though the statistics show the trust is not always fulfilled. But then something, when I mentioned experience, the weakness is that people base themselves on their own experience, whereas I emphasize that we must look at the experience of all history, of all civilizations. And what we are constantly doing is forgetting that what we are trying to do has been attempted in the past and it hasn't worked. And yet we repeat the mistake on and on and on. And so we are very inefficient in dealing with realities.
Yeah.
Well, to add to that, I kind of disagree. In a way, I understand your point of saying that we try again and again and we fail. But I feel like science in general is the whole goal of human race, and science is to kind of make sense of the chaos system that we have around us. We will never 100% fully understand the universe around us. We'll never fully make sense, but yet throughout evolution and the push of science, for example, for the weather, the example you gave a couple of centuries ago, we couldn't predict accurately. Today, we're not getting to 100% precise prediction of the weather, but now we're able to get to 95%, 98%. So it's like, even if there will always be some uncertainty, now we manage to push it to the point where we get closer and closer to in terms of probability, to an accurate prediction of what might happen.
Yes, I think we never get there. And the joy of science is that when you have solved one problem, it opens up many new problems. And we're always searching, and that is the pleasure of science, is in discovery. We cannot, when you say this shows that experience can be properly used to overcome uncertainty, I think we must, and this is something I am very conscious of, just as in medicine, every medicine has got a little writing on it saying side effects, possible side effects. You cure one disease and you create another disease. You may do, who knows? And this applies to everything that we do. We may do something with the intention of solving a crisis, but there will be a side effect. For example, we invented motor cars. Wonderful. But look what they've done to our pollution. We didn't expect that. And so there's all of this uncertain of the side effect.
And yeah, when you say what you just said, I think it makes me think about when you make a decision, I make a decision, we make a choice around whatever situation, we choose something. When we choose, we very rarely think about, or probably not enough, the consequences of our decisions. Because when you make a decision, you cannot anticipate all the impact that your decision is going to have, not just on the situation, but on others, because you don't know how others are going to react and how they're going to be affected by your decision, your choice, and so on. And we only make decisions for ourselves. And I think it's that same sequence and the complex system in which we evolve, that there are so many parameters, there are so many elements to consider, that it is absolutely impossible to consider them all. And the best job you can do is to prepare yourself and to genuinely do your best, and always consider that you're not alone in what you do, but that there are going to be other elements impacted that you don't know are the way, you don't know in which way they're going to be impacted. And when we work on helping people develop themselves with the Savoir-Relier, what we try to do is make them aware of this, at least. Because at least if you're aware, you're more cautious. So when you're more cautious, the likelihood of having people around you who will gather and grasp what you have in mind will affect them. At least they will understand. Maybe they will not accept, they will not like, maybe they will be negatively impacted, but at least there will be some understanding. And that's what we're pushing. We're pushing to create a greater understanding, so that when you are in situations where your decision, your role, your impact affects others, then it's more likely to be more effective, more positive than negative. But yeah,
you make a good point, and one would add to it that, in first place, you are trying to get to know the person you're dealing with, and that means getting to know not only one person but as many people as possible. And then when you talk about getting people to write portraits, if we had all the portraits of everybody alive, then we would be fully informed about the possible dangers which our hopes may encounter. And we cannot do that, but we can hope to do that. We can get to know more people. And the second element I would add is you get to know, you establish friends who will agree with you, but then you have to discover who are going to be the enemies of this. Who are the people who will immediately, because they have certain set ideas, will immediately reject what you say on principle. And there are very many people who do that on principle.
Yeah.
May I jump in?
Please do so.
May I jump in? Hi, I'm Eva. Nice to meet you all. Very, very interesting discussion, and I'm very closely following the discussion and the different points of view. Thank you very much for sharing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sure.
Yeah, please go ahead. We can't hear you anymore.
Oh, sorry. I have a very unstable connection.
Okay.
I have a very unstable connection. That's why I don't have my camera. So I was listening and thinking back, to managing in uncertain times or with uncertainties. I'm a manager too, like I guess everybody attending the meeting here. And I have this question every day to myself, and listening to this discussion, I'm actually getting conscious about the fact that we have limiting beliefs when we have certainties, and having certainties is a kind of need to control in order not to be afraid. When we control and we have the impression that we can control everybody and everything and anticipate the consequences and the people and their behavior and their reaction, then we put ourselves into a box. And I think what is really a great tool that human beings can have is think out of the box. This is, the kind of baseline a lot of recruiters ask for when they look for managers. Okay, what is your proposal to think out of the box? I think the past years, many people were looking for these kind of profiles in companies to bring change, to bring new kind of business models, to bring new kind of approaches to development, to managing people. And we have seen in the past years that the management in the companies has really changed because we have opened up to the world. I think this is a great opportunity for humankind in the Western world, because in the Western world, we are so accustomed to the fact that we can control everything. The more we know, the more we have access to technology, to studies, to knowledge and everything. We believe human beings, we will know one day everything, but we will never know everything. It's impossible because we have limitless powers and competences and capacities. I mean, it's just looking back to the history of humanity. What we're doing today we could not imagine this 100 years ago, 50 years ago. And because we have discovered more capacities, more inventions, more ideas, it has been always because somebody was thinking out of the box and because there was a crisis. So the crisis should give us, the conscious that we don't need to control everything. We don't need to have certainties, because it's in times of uncertainties that we come up with the best ideas, because we are forced to think about a solution. So we're just going back to what Homo sapiens was in the very beginning. You needed to have fire, so let's go in and find a solution. You needed to feed your community, so let's go and fish and get somehow, a tool to get, the fish out of the water. So it's in times of crisis that human being, I believe, for myself, comes up with the greatest ideas, because we are forced, we have no other option than to survive and find new solutions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing, Majideva. Where are you based?
I'm based actually in Italy for a Swiss company.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. I'm German-born and with Afghan origins. So having two cultures, I really realized during this pandemic that my Afghan background, although I've never lived there, but the fact that I grew up with that reality too, so German and Afghan, made me believe that, people have survived somehow with uncertainties and uncertain times. And we in the Western world, when we lose control, then we don't know what to do. But it's possible. It's really possible.
Thank you very much for sharing. One thing that I have in mind when you spoke, that I had in mind when you spoke, is the phrase, the more I know that I don't know. And one thing that we share when we work with Savoir-Relier and that we really promote is that humility of not being full of certainties, but accepting with humility that there is always something to learn in everything we face, in everything we do. And I think this is an important part of the sharing and the message. And thank you again for all of you for being here. As you know, our format is very short. We always keep to 30 minutes so that it's always too short. Of course, we would like to have much more, but we want to leave this session by opening up and by giving you opportunities to keep in touch and to stay tuned and to keep sharing on our different networks and our platforms. And we want to, with the Savoir-Relier and with the team, keep on developing those ideas and questions of sharing. I particularly want to thank Theodore for joining us today. It's a big surprise, and I'm so happy that that we reconnected through the talk, and looking forward to seeing you again. Thank you, Rémi, for being here. I saw Liam was there too, and many others. And thank you for joining, and let's be in touch, all of us.
Can I give you just one question, Valerie?
Yes.
A very good question. The subject was raised, thinking out of the box. You try and get a job and tell people that you think out of the box, and they will say, go to hell, because we want you to fit into our box. So
that's
how
why you
can
should
you,
never give
how
up.
can you get business to experiment, even though they will lose money?
Thank you for that great conclusion, Theodore, and thank you, Matt, for again, Rémi, 𝐓𝐚𝐥𝐤, Camila. I know Francesco is here too, from our team as well. Thank you, Chris, also for your point. That was very important as well. I see Patricia is here also. Please keep joining, stay in touch. We'll be always happy to share and to work together and just to spend some time sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.